back page, there is an explanation about what communion is about. And maybe you have some questions about it as well, but that can help you understand that as a parent, it also can help you just to take that and to talk with your kids about it, and to help them to understand what it is that we're doing and why we do that, and why we celebrate that. So encourage you to take that and to look at that and to use that maybe at a family meal. You can sit down and have a little bit of a conversation about what the impact of the meaning of communion is. The other thing is that we're going to take a little bit of time at the end of the service that if you have a question or a comment you'd like to make, or you can always text me. And so the number will be up here on the slides. It's also there in your program with the notes. So we'll take about the last few minutes that if there are some questions or comments, then I'll interact with those. And if we don't get to it, then I'll respond to your text, your question or comment a little bit later. So I want to start with sort of a true confession. Okay, I've got a question here for you. It's a time for authenticity, for honesty. All right. And the question is this: so, are you an owner's manual first kind of person, or an owner's manual last kind of person? You know what I'm talking about. I mean, yeah. I mean, some people are already grabbing their head, right? You know, it's like, and that's usually the wife. So are you an owner's manual first, where, okay, when you get something new or you get something that has to be put together, is that you're going to go and you're going to read the directions, you're going to read the instructions, have a full and complete understanding of all of the scope of the directions. You go from the beginning to the end, make sure that you understand, and then you go into the new car, you go into the project, you go into whatever it is that has the owner's manual or the instructions to it. Or are you the person who says, I got this, I can figure this out, I've done something like this before at some point in my life, and how different can it be, right? I've driven a car before, all right? So who needs to read an owner's manual? It's another car, okay? I'll just do it. And then you get in and there's like a light comes on and you're like, I've never seen a light like that before. I've never seen a light do a thing like that before. I wonder what that means. So you're like, okay, I need to go and figure out what's going on. So, okay, so here's the question. Owner's manual first, people? Raise your hand, okay? Yes, there we go. All right, awesome. Okay, owner's manual last, people. Yes, I love you. Okay, you're awesome. You are the best people, by the way. So, yeah. But here's the good thing, is that usually, you know, a lot of times owner's manuals first and last people are married to each other, and so that person who's first, even though they don't have control, they're sitting there and they've read it, right? And they're like, we need to do this. This is what's going on here. Now here's the deal, is that when you're putting together a kid's bike, and you have leftover parts, it's not that big of a deal. Unless it's the brakes. Then that's a big deal, right? But for the most part, it's like, well, you're just thinking, I could have saved them money. They didn't need these extra parts. So it's not that big a deal. But when it comes to life, when it comes to the important things, and we just find ourselves muddling through, it can have some really significant consequences to it. Now, a couple weeks ago, we began a new series called Influence. And looking at us as being people of influence in the world, that God has put people into our path, and He's put people into our life, that He has privileged us to have an influence towards. And if we're a follower of Jesus, a part of our life is influencing people to know Jesus and to follow Jesus in their life. And we are people who are being influenced as well. And so what we're doing is that we're looking and saying, how did Jesus influence His disciples? How did Jesus influence the people that He had around Him? And is there something that we can learn from that in order that we can be intentionally influencing the people around us? And what I'm putting to you is that indeed there is a model that Jesus used in His influence of others. And it started with Him calling people to follow Him. That the beginning was to follow Him, and then He taught them the things that they needed to know. And then He showed them what that looked like lived out. And then He sent them out to go to, in order to live that out, try that out. And then when they succeeded and failed, He brought them back and He coached them to help them to be the best person they could be, to be the fullest expression of God in their life. That there is a process They can also help us understand how do we need to be influenced? How do we need to grow? How can we grow in our life? And then how can we help other people grow around us? And this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this second one. We looked at it in the last couple of weeks of what does it mean to follow Jesus? How do we follow Jesus? And if you weren't here for that, I really encourage you to go online to either watch it, the video, or to download the audio. You can listen to that as you're driving. You can download the Cold Springs Church app. We have an app where all of that is available. Or you can go to a website and you can get it off the website. But this morning we're going to look at this idea of knowing. What do we need to know? What are the teachings of Jesus that we need to know? And I want to read a part of Jesus' teaching this morning. And as I'm reading this, and you can follow along, it's going to be in Luke, the Gospel of Luke, chapter 6. If you're using the Bible in the chair near you, it's going to be page 736. And there's a couple of sections of Jesus' teaching. One in Matthew called the Sermon on the Mount. It's Matthew chapter 5 through 7. It's sort of this big body of Jesus' teaching where he's gathered all together. There's another section in Matthew chapter 6. It's called the Sermon on the Plain. And it has a similar teaching. It's a little bit shorter than what Matthew has captured. And I want to read a section of that. And as I'm reading it, what I want you to do is I want you to imagine yourself as one of the people who are in the crowd listening to Jesus for the first time. Because it says that people have gathered from all over the place. They come all from all over the place in order to hear Jesus. And I want you to think about the place where you are experiencing tension or questions or struggle or challenge in your life. And I want you to listen to these words of Jesus from that perspective, maybe a fresh perspective of listening to this for the first time and bringing your life into contact with that. And what would that mean? In Luke chapter 6, I'm going to start at verse 17. And Jesus came down with them and his disciples and stood on a level place with a great crowd of his disciples and a great multitude of people from all Judea, Jerusalem, and the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon, who came to hear him and to be healed of their diseases. And those who were troubled with unclean spirits were cured, and all the crowd sought to touch him, for power came out from him and healed them all. So, okay, you get the idea from Luke. He's like, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people from all over who come in order to have contact with Jesus, and everybody's trying to touch Jesus. It sounds a little chaotic, right? For you introverts, you're going, I don't know how I can do that. No, don't want to be there. But there's this multitudes around Jesus. And then in verse 20, he says, and Jesus lifted up his eyes on his disciples, and he said, blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when people hate you, and when they exclude you, and revile you, and spurn your name as evil, on account of the Son of Man. Rejoice in that day, and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. For so their fathers did to the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you receive your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you shall be hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. Woe to you when all people speak well of you, for so their fathers did to the false prophets. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. To one who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from one who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who begs from you, and from one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. And as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. If you love those who love you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. But love your enemies, and do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High. For he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Be merciful, even as your Father is merciful. Judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And Jesus continued on in telling a parable. He says, can a blind man lead a blind man? Will they not both fall into a pit? A disciple is not above his teacher, but everyone who is fully trained will be like his teacher. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? How can you say to your brother, brother, let me take out the speck that is in your eye, when you yourself do not see the log that is in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take out the speck that is in your brother's eye. For no good tree bears bad fruit, nor, again, does a bad tree bear good fruit. For each tree is known by its own fruit, for figs are not gathered from thorn bushes, nor are grapes picked from bramble bush. The good person out of the good treasure of his heart produces good, and the evil person out of his evil treasure produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I tell you? Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and does them, I will show you what he is like. He is like a man building a house who dug deep and laid the foundation on the rock. And when a flood arose, a stream broke against that house and could not shake it because it had been well built. But the one who hears and does not do them is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. When the stream broke against it, immediately it fell. And the ruin of that house was great. So as you heard those words, is there anything sort of grab you? Anything sort of you hear maybe for the first time as you put yourself in that situation of being one of those people standing there on the plain with Jesus, all those people around, and Jesus begins to speak, and you're listening and hearing for the very first time these words. Make you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Should have. You see, when we look at the teachings of Jesus, one of the things that we have to understand is that Jesus came intending to build a new kingdom. He didn't come as a reformer. He came as to bring something new. To invite us into this kingdom. And it's about a kingdom that Jesus speaks of. And so when Jesus gives this teaching, when he says these words to the disciples and they were captured for us, he's talking about a whole different way of looking at life. He's talking about a whole different way of understanding the reality of God and our lives and our neighbors and how they all come together. He's talking about a whole different reality that we are invited to live in and to begin to practice into our lives, which is in contradiction is different than what we're used to. You know, if you go into Matthew chapter 5 and read Matthew 5 through 7, there's a section in there where I love this phraseology that Jesus used, where he says, "You have heard it said," and then he makes this sort of statement of sort of the conventional wisdom of, hey, well, this is the way that people say life is, and then he says, "But I tell you." He does that over and over. He says, "You've heard it said, but I tell you. You've heard it said, but I tell you." See, he's inviting us into this different, this new kingdom. And it's an invitation to live the best life possible. I am totally convinced of that, is that the way that we can experience the absolute best life possible is that we follow Jesus. And that we, as we follow Jesus, that we hear his teaching and we interact with his teaching. As we do that, we come to experience the fullness of blessing that he has for us. Go back a few pages to Matthew, okay? So we were in Luke. If you go back to Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. So a couple of books of the Bible. Matthew is the first book of the New Testament. First one, it tells the story of Jesus' life. And in Matthew chapter 7, at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, this from chapter 5 to chapter 7, Jesus tells a story that we already heard Luke capture about the person who builds a house on the rock with the sand. But he puts it into terms that particularly a Jewish person would have really understood. It says, let me read to you in chapter 7, verse 24 of Matthew. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house upon the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and the rain fell, and the floods came, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. And what Matthew does here is that he puts it into these terms that a Jewish person would fully grasp, because when you read, particularly in the wisdom books of the Old Testament, there's this idea of, are you going to live a life of wisdom, or are you going to live a life of foolishness? And what Jesus says here that Matthew captures is that the best life possible of following and knowing Jesus and knowing the teachings of Jesus is the path of wisdom. And if you want to have wisdom, if you want to live wisely, if you want to live well, you will know Jesus and what he has to say. Conversely, if you want to be a fool, if you want to live a life of pain, if you want to live a life of failure, then you will not hear Jesus' words. You will hear them and not do Jesus' words. You will not allow them to penetrate your life. That he sort of, it makes it, and we don't like that, right? I mean, it's like, okay, I don't like anybody calling me a fool. But Jesus essentially says that. It says, if you reject me, then you are a fool. You're a fool. And you have no chance of living the best life possible. And the key to it is that you've got to hear. You've got to hear. It keeps coming back to that. Is that you have to hear. You have to be willing to hear the words of Jesus. Now, it's sort of interesting if you think about this, again, the context, and you think about Jesus on the plain, all these people are surrounding Jesus, that within the time and the culture of the day, the vast majority of the people who were listening to Jesus, they would have been illiterate. That the only way that they're going to get the words of Jesus, they're going to hear him speak them and hear his disciples speak them and teach them as well. It's a different culture, it's a different time for us, right? I mean, that we are blessed, particularly in this country, that we have these books called the Bible. And that we know how to read, and that we can open it up, and we can open it up on our app, on our phone, or on an iPad, or we can pull it up on our computer. I mean, probably a number of us, if I went into your house, I said, show me how many Bibles you have in your house. You would have more than one. I mean, you go into my office, you can find multiple copies of the Bible in different languages as well. And the thing is that we've become spoiled with him. And Jesus continues on here, and I want to look at another story which sort of emphasizes this importance of us hearing Jesus. And it's where Jesus talks about dirt. And sort of this question of what kind of dirt are you, all right? Because each and every one of us has sort of dirt. And I'm not talking about dirt sin, I'm talking about dirt in the kind of life and the openness that you have to what Jesus has to say. So turn back over to Luke chapter 8. Okay, so the place we started in, Luke chapter 8, page 738 in the Bible to share. And Jesus tells a story about dirt. And in order to make a point, in order to help the disciples understand, Jesus was this master storyteller, that we love stories, and he brought these deep spiritual truths out of these stories that he told that related to people's lives. And so in Luke chapter 8, I'm going to start in verse 4. It says, when a great crowd was gathering and people from town after town came to Jesus, he said in a parable, a sower went out to sow a seed, and as he sowed, some seed fell on the path and was trampled underfoot. And the birds of the air devoured it. And some fell on the rock, and as it grew up, it withered away because it had no moisture. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up with it and choked it. And some fell into good soil and grew and yielded 100-fold. As he said these things, he called out, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. Oh, let me rephrase that, okay? As he said these things, he called out, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. And when his disciples asked him what this parable meant, he said, to you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of God, but to others they are parables, so that seeing they may not see, and hearing they may not understand. Verse 11, now the parable is this. So Jesus explains this parable. The seed is the word of God. The ones along the path are those who have heard, then the devil comes and takes away the word from their hearts so that they may not believe and be saved. And the ones on the rock are those who, when they hear the word, receive it with joy, but these have no root. They believe for a while, and in time of testing fall away. And as for what fell among the thorns, they are those who hear, but as they go on their way, they are choked by the cares and riches and pleasures of life, and their fruit does not mature. As for that in the good soil, they are those who, hearing the word, hold it fast in an honest and good heart, and bear fruit with patience. So as we look at this, one of the things we come back to is that you've got to hear. That Jesus says, if you have ears, hear this. Those who have ears, hear. And if you thought about it, think about it. You have two eyes, you have two ears, and you have one mouth, right? But how often do we think we have like 5 mouths, right? We got to get all that stuff out, and we shut off our ears. Jesus says, listen, pay attention, listen to what I have to say. Come and listen to me. You've got to hear. And the other thing that comes out of the story is that the Bible, God's words, the word of Jesus is really, really, really important for your life, for my life. And Jesus says that the seed is the word of God. The seed is the word of God. The thing that's going to bring fruit, the thing that's going to bring blessing, the thing that's going to bring life to you is the word of God. A number of years ago, there was a major church in the U.S. that did this study in order to try to figure out what was going on in the spiritual life of believers. In particular, this church is like over 20,000 people. And they were sensing that there was this lag that was happening in people's spiritual life. And one of the things that they discovered out of the study was that the number one most important thing for a person to have a deep and enduring and resilient life with Jesus, to have a faith that endured through challenges and difficulties and good times, whatever they faced, were people who regularly read the Bible. That was the number one thing, above all other things. The people who regularly spent time reading the Bible, reading the Scriptures, were people who were resilient and endured and experienced a deep life with Jesus. The Bible is really, really, really important. The thing is that we live in a culture and a society where we have access to all over the place. At any time. You go on my phone, you go on my tablet, you can find multiple apps where I can access the Bible. We have, you can carry them, big versions, small versions, New Testament versions, whole Bible versions. All of those things are available to us, and yet we take the time to read it. And Jesus is saying, you know what? It's really, really important for your life. And then the other thing is that Jesus goes on, he says, this battle that you are facing is real. Does anybody here feel like you're in the midst of a battle at all? Do you sort of feel like the guy on the screen, right? You're armored up, you're there, and somebody has knocked you on your butt. I know the pastor just said that. But it's an appropriate expression for where some of you are right now. Kids, talk to your parents later about that, okay? So now I am going to get some texts. It's a spiritual battle. The ones along the path are those who have heard, and the devil comes and takes away the word from their hearts so that they may not believe and be saved. This is a life and death thing going on here. This is a life and death thing. That the battle that is happening, the spiritual battle, this word going and penetrating people's hearts. And so your kids and your grandkids and your husband, your wife, your coworkers, this is a battle for their soul, because it's about that they may not believe and be saved. It's life and death that's happening here. And it's about daily life. Jesus is saying, listen, this relates to your daily life. The ones on the rock are those who, when they hear the word, receive it with joy, but these have no root. They believe for a while, and in time of testing will fall away. You ever felt like that? You ever been that in your life? It's like, yeah, okay, this is great, man. I love Jesus. Everything's fantastic. That was a great sermon. That was a great message. Oh, that was a great passage. I'll come back to it in about 6 months. It's really hard to live on mountaintops. Have you ever noticed that? I mean, it's really hard. I mean, mountaintops are great, but have you ever noticed that we either fall off, roll off, get kicked off, pushed off, roll down? I mean, and you just can't live on a mountaintop. And as for what fell among the thorns, they are those who hear, but as they go on their way, they are choked by the cares and riches and pleasures of life, and their fruit does not mature. Anybody here got any cares? How about riches? What pleasures? Life good? It's interesting that Jesus says, you know what? The full spectrum of life can rob you of your spiritual life. But knowing Jesus is possible. Knowing Jesus is possible. This is where Jesus ends up. He says, listen, as for that in the good soil, they are those who, hearing the word, hold it fast on an honest and good heart and bear fruit with patience. What kind of dirt are you? Are you open at all to what Jesus has to say? Have you tilled up the soil of your heart, of your mind, to allow maybe something that Jesus has to say to come and to mess with you, to challenge you, to take roots in your life? You need to hear it. You need to hear it. And then hold fast to it. Look what Jesus says here. An honest and a good heart is a person of authenticity. It's a person who is doing the hard work of looking in the mirror or looking in the cell phone, of the selfie, part. Have you ever seen some people's selfies and you go, did you really look at that before you posted that? Did you actually take time to look at that and post that? The person with a good and sincere heart is the one who looks in the mirror, pays attention, says, Jesus, what is the groom? And when that happens, when we live by it, we are blessed by it. We are blessed by it. An honest and good heart and bear fruit with patience. I really wish Jesus would have left the last two words. Just bear fruit, right? It's just like, okay, man, you know what? I read the Bible and now there's like fruit everywhere. It's like, branches breaking. People are going, David, man, you are so holy, you're so spiritual. Wow, you just read the Bible this morning? Yeah, man, it's amazing how that works. You just read the Bible and just everything happens. But then Jesus puts these words on here, with patience. 1985, I was in Australia. I was studying as an exchange student at Oregon State University, and when my professor was a guy by the name of Barry Marks, a follower of Jesus, a great guy, had an appointment with him, and he knew he was going to be late, and so he put a little note on his door, and this is what it said: David Cooke, just wait patiently. So 1985 in Australia, that's the original note. I took it because I knew that that wasn't just from Barry Marks, that was a message from God, and it has followed with my life. And if you go into my office today and you look on my computer monitor, it is dead center at the bottom of the computer monitor, because it's the thing that I constantly struggle with. David Cooke, just look patiently. Are you waiting in your life for some fruit? An honest and a good heart, it will bear fruit. It will bear fruit. Are you wrestling to see, can God show up? God, do this thing, change me, change my life, transform me. Just wait patiently. God is not forgotten. Follow Jesus. Know Jesus' teaching. In that there is the best life. In that there is a blessed life. In that there is the fruitful life that he invites you into. Wow, I even said something bad and I didn't get comments. So you guys are like, what's it totally in? Hey, let's pray, all right? And if you do have a comment, you can always text that number to me at some point, or a question. I'd love to interact with you, all right? Let's pray. Jesus, thank you that you give that invitation